welcome to Artistic Adventures. We're going to continue our Korean doll project today, and we're going to be focusing on sewing the dress together. And remember, it's called hanbok. All right, this is the dress that I'm kind of going to be using as my guide for making this hanbok. Notice it has flowers painted on it. And so this particular video is going to be about making the dress, and then I'm going to do another one where I do the painting because that will take quite a while. All right, so yesterday I started this project, and yesterday was one of those days where nothing I did went right. So this was the jacket I started making. I was going to make it out of this blue material, and then I made this pink satin skirt. And after I made the skirt and everything was finished, I realized it just came down to just below her knees, not all the way to the ground like I wanted to. And the jacket, although the back part fit well, the front part was not big enough to go to cross over her chest. So basically everything I did, the hours of work that I did yesterday, are all going in the trash. So this time I'm working with some pink fabric and some green fabric for the jacket, and then I bought this trim to go around the sleeves. And then I'm going to use that blue just as trim instead of, because it's taffeta and it's a little hard to deal with. These other materials are cotton, and I think they'll be better for painting as well. This pink has a little bit of a sparkle in it, but it's hard to see, I think, in the video, but does have a little bit of a sparkle in it, but it's not the satin that I used before. I only had that one little piece of satin, a little scrap that I had gotten at a thrift store. So making the skirt a lot longer, so hopefully this time it won't go to her knees. And I'm cutting out basically a long rectangle of fabric for the skirt. And then I'm drawing an outline of just a basic sleeveless top for the dress. It's really not going to show. It's just to have something to attach the skirt to, and then we'll be putting the jacket over it. So I put together two pieces for the back. It'll be opening in the back, and then one piece for the front. And the back skirt, I'm not sewing the seam of that yet. I'm going to go ahead and sew it to the bodice before that I do that. It'll be a lot easier to sew it. So here's my three pieces, the front and the two pieces of the back. That's it for the pink material. I'm going to fold that up and get it out of the way. And now we're going to work with the green material for the jacket. And like I said, the jacket, actually the back part of it fit really well. So I'm going to kind of use that as an outline, and the length was good and everything. And I'll use that for the back. And then when I make the front, I'm going to have to make that, the crossovers a lot come further across the chest than I did on that purple jacket. Yesterday was a weird day. It was like the sewing genies were not helping me out at all. Usually I can cut things out and sew them together and they fit pretty well, but yesterday nothing was working. All right, so I've done the back part, and now for the front part, I'm going to mark half of the top based on half of the back part so it'll match. And then I'm cutting that angled piece across the front, but I'm just giving myself a lot more material to work with. And you know, the thing is, if it's too much, you can always cut it. It's when you go too small that you're in trouble, and that's what happened to me yesterday. And so this time we'll be giving ourselves lots of room for error if we make another mistake. So now I have the two pieces that should cross over in the front, and then the one piece for the back of the jacket. So now we can start putting those pieces together. And the first thing we're going to do is sew the skirt though, and for this I'm going to run a gathering thread through the top of it, a loose gathering thread. So I adjusted my little sewing machine and just running a loose thread through the top, and then I'm going to go ahead and hem it while it's just one long piece. It's a lot easier to hem it like this than after it's sewn together in the back and it's a big circle. So now we've got that, And we're going to sew this. We're going to sew the top part together, and then we can attach it to the skirt. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is sew the shoulder seams for the two pieces. And after I do that, then I'll be able to hem the neckline. And I did cut that neckline into a V in the front, just so it's a little bit more open. And now I'm just turning down a simple hem to hem the neckline, so it'll have a little bit of a finished look. Although, as I said, this pink top's not going to really show with the jacket on top of it. All right, so now we've got that neckline trimmed, and I mean hemmed, and now we're going to hem the openings for the armholes. And I'm just turning a little seam up for that. And once we do that, then we can sew the underarm seams, or the side seams of the bodice. And then our bodice will be ready to attach to the skirt. So we're going to turn that and put right sides together with the skirt. And after we gather it, we have to you pull the strands of the thread to gather the skirt small enough so that it's the same size as the bodice. And then, although I hate pinning, we are going to pin it. It's a whole lot easier to sew this gathered material if you pin it. And also just to make sure you have your gathers pulled down straight, so when you sew them, they come out straight instead of off to an angle. All right, so now we've got that sewed, and I'm going to grit my teeth and sew this, hoping that the needle doesn't hit the pins, because I really hate it when that happens. And successfully, I didn't get killed from sewing that or have my eye put out, and we turned it and everything looks good. So now we're going to sew up the back seam. I'm sewing from the hem up to about 2 inches from the waistline. And this will enable us to get the dress onto the doll. And then we can close up that back seam a little bit later. All right, so we're going to try it on and see how it fits. And the sewing genies are smiling at me today. It's the right length and it fits around her beautifully. So I'm very happy with that. Now we're going to go back to the jacket and change my thread to a green thread. And the first thing we're going to do is sew the shoulder seam and the upper part of the sleeve. And do that on both sides. And I'm doing that first so that I can hem the sleeve and apply the trim before I sew the bottom sleeve seam together. And I'm also hemming the ends of the sleeves before I put the trim on. Just doing a simple turn up. So now I pull out my trim and measure it. And I'm putting 2 seams in this, one across the bottom, the 2 edges of the trim, and that holds it on. And I just used a basting stitch for that. And for the other side, same thing, just measuring my trim across the end of the sleeve and then sewing the 2 sides of the trim down to the end of the sleeve. And once we do that, then we can close up the sleeve, sew that underarm seam and the side seam of the jacket. And we're getting close to finishing this up. This is going well, so much better than yesterday. All right, so just sewing the underarm seam, and then I'm putting 3 little snips under the underarm. This will help when you turn it so it doesn't bunch up. So it sort of spreads it out a little bit. All right, and then we'll do the same thing on the other side. Sew the underarm seam, put a couple of snips in there on the underarm, and then we can turn the sleeves. And then we'll have an idea of how this is going to look and if everything's going to fit properly. Holding my breath. Yesterday really did me in after all that work and nothing worked right. But I know we've all had those days, right? You just keep going. You just try again. And this day's everything's working out nicely. All right, so now let's try our jacket on and see how that works. Just going to fold it over and see how it fits. Now it seems to be coming down into points in the front, and that's okay. We'll just trim those off, but I want to mark it at the point that I want the length to actually be so I get it the right length. And after we do that, we can take it off the doll, lay it down flat, and then just cut off where we marked it, and that'll give us a straight bottom across the jacket. And this is going to turn out great. It's going to be really nice. I'm only going to have to trim a little bit of the front. I need just a little triangle cut off of the top to make the ankle a little bit more apparent. And now that we have that, I want to sew on some of this blue material as trim. So I cut a strip of the blue material, and what I'm going to do is sew that to the right side of the jacket front. And we're going to go all the way around, starting at the end of one side and then up around the collar and down the front of the other side. And I had enough of that material was hanging loose on the ends after I sewed it, but we can trim it. So now what I'm going to do is double fold that blue material over so there's no rough edge inside, and then turning it to the inside, I'm going to sew it so that the thread which is green, is going to be running along the green material on the outside, so it doesn't show on the blue. So now we have a nice blue trim that's going to crisscross across the front of the doll. All right, and now we can hem the bottom of the jacket. And because of that angle, I'm not really able to use the sewing machine to appropriately hem that, because this little sewing machine will only sew about maybe 3 layers at the most, but not enough to turn up all that. So what I did once I got most of it hemmed is to go back in with some needle and thread and just turn those little sharp corners in and sew them down so that it looks finished. So just, when you have these problems, you just step back and use another technique to get the effect that you want. And once I have those corners fixed, then we can go back and fit it on the doll and do some final touches. So this really worked out perfectly. I couldn't have asked for it to fit any better. I really like the way it fit. So, it's just the short jacket that comes right sort of at the bottom of her breast, and it's just the right length to cover up the seam for the pink dress to the top of the pink dress, the skirt to the top. All right, so now I'm taking some blue ribbon. Um, from what I can see, it's like there's a blue ribbon that attaches to one side. So I'm just gluing that edge down underneath where it folds over, and we'll let that dry. And then I'm going to take the smaller piece and just make a loop and glue it on the back side. So you end up with this small loop like that. And then I'm going to put some glue on the dress on the right side of the bodice, and then just glue that down. And then what we're going to do is pull that long piece through the loop. And that's as best as I can tell how this picture looks. It looks like that pulls through the loop and sort of holds it together. And then there's also these 2 lighter ribbons that come down in the front. So I'm just taking some lighter pink satin ribbons, gluing those together, and then popping those underneath the jacket and gluing those down underneath. I don't know as much about this costume as I did about the kimono and all the different parts and how to dress, because there was a lot of information about that. If anybody knows more about the Korean dress, please feel free to help us in the comments and tell us more about it. All right, so I pulled that loop through, or the long piece through the loop, and now I'm just going to go ahead and glue that down because I don't want it to come loose. And that's pretty much the costume. I think today everything turned out really nice. So here's the front. I'll use these still photos to give you a better look at the dress from all different angles. I really like the way the sleeve trim looks with that blue trim that I put around the neckline. It really turned out very nice. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you know any more about Korean dress, let us know. And the next video, we're going to be painting the flowers on this dress to completely finish the look. And then we'll move on to the hairdo. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Thanks and bye.